All right, our next inductee is someone who first earned his place in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion, back in 2009. To be exact, Friday, February the 13th of 2009. On that fateful day, after a week of intense lobbying and some protest bourbon poured on the Capitol steps in Frankfurt, the Kentucky Senate took up final passage of a bill that would install the sales tax on all alcohol. It didn't matter that it was already being collected in the wholesale tax. It wasn't seen at the cash register, so they wanted to add it. And for y'all who were with us there, it was predestined to pass. It had the full weight of the governor of Kentucky, the Speaker of the House of Kentucky, and the Senate President of Kentucky behind it. But as his fellow Senate Republicans caucused that day to whip the vote, a young senator refused to take part and stood his ground on the Senate floor while his colleagues met in another room and met for hours. And I was in the gallery that day with, I think, half of our industry. And I turned to Barry Beckton, then of Diageo, another member of the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame. He was chair of our Government Affairs Committee. And I said, you know, that guy's taking a hell of a chance with his future here today. And he was. But his colleagues took note of that bold stance and just 4 years later elected him to the powerful position of Senate Majority Floor Leader. Now, we're fortunate to have a Hall of Famer today from the 2022 class who also knows a little bit about life in the political arena and what our next inductee's contributions mean to our industry. So please welcome Chad McCoy, CEO of Thousand Acres Distilling Company, retired state representative from Nelson County, and a 2022 inductee into the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame, to introduce Damon Thayer, the longest-serving Republican Senate Majority Floor Leader until his retirement in 2024, the only four-time recipient of the KDA's prestigious 100 Proof Award, and co-founder of Kentucky Senator Bourbon. Chad, welcome.
Well, Chad was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2022, and he enjoys fly fishing.
It is my privilege and honor to get to introduce our next inductee. So he's not originally from Kentucky. I'm not going to hold it against him because in his time here, I don't know of another person who has embodied everything about our state, from horse racing to making his own bourbon to being a proud sponsor of everything we try to do. And he served this great Commonwealth for 22 years as a state senator. But the last 12 years of that, he was the Senate Majority Floor Leader. Now, for those of you that don't know a lot about the inside baseball of politics, I'm going to let you know a secret. There's probably not a more powerful position than Senate Majority Floor Leader. I won't call out Senator Rocky Adams over there because she would agree. But see, what the floor leader does is the floor leader is the guy that decides what bills are going to get voted on in any given day. And you got to remember this, politics is an absolute blood sport. And Damon was kind of a cage fighter back in the day. And so if he didn't get what he wanted and you had a bill that still had to come through the Senate, your bill was going to die. And there wasn't anything you could do about it. So over the years, and think about this, guys, from this industry's perspective, for 12 years, he was that gatekeeper. So kind of go in your mind with me back 14 years, because you've been out 2, right? 1. Been out 1. So go back 13 years. What was this industry doing 13 years ago? Were we allowed to have samples at the distillery? Were we allowed to sell drinks at the distillery? Were we allowed to have fairs and festivals? Were we allowed to ship bourbon? Were we allowed to do barrel picks? Were we allowed to have tasting rooms? Every single one of those changes happened because that man over there pushed it through on the Senate floor. And if you look, his name's there as a sponsor on most of them. He's authored most of them, and he absolutely supported us at every single turn. And this industry really owes him a lot of recognition for the changes that we've seen in these last 13 years. But after getting out, he didn't just quit. Actually, it started even before then. He is also the proud founder and co-owner of the Kentucky Senator Bourbon brand. which highlights some incredible aged whiskey, as well as some really, really fun stories and characters in politics to go along with it. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome up the gentleman from Scott, as Eric said, the only four-time KDA 100 Proof Award winner in this industry's history, Damon Thayer.
So he described the General Assembly as a blood sport, and Damon seems to be the champion of the kumite here.
It's amazing.
You know, I always wanted to be more like Chad McCoy when I grew up. I wanted to be a retired legislator. Check. I wanted to own my own bourbon company like he does. Check. And I wanted to have great hair like him. Well, to quote the late, great Meatloaf, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. I never thought I would be in the Hall of anything, let alone the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame. I like to tell people that I wasn't born in Kentucky, but I came as soon as I could, back in 1992, to work in the horse racing business at Turfway Park. I had no exposure to bourbon. I grew up in northern Michigan. The closest thing I came to any amber-colored liquid was during the summer, you know, the 5 weeks out of the year where it's warm in northern Michigan, we would have campfires in the woods, and all the local kids and parents would come over, and my sister can vouch for me on this. The kids would play hide and go seek and ghost in the graveyard in the woods, and our parents would pass around a crappy bottle of Canadian Club around the campfire. Sorry, Fred, I know that Jim Beam sells that stuff, and I promised last week that I wouldn't talk about Canada any more than that. I love bourbon so much that I had a specially made jacket with a bourbon rocks glass liner. Just for this day. If you want to know where you can get it, just call your local Tom James rep. It's available in stock. I also love bourbon so much that I co-founded my own bourbon company, resurrecting a lapsed brand called Kentucky Senator Bourbon, with each release named after a U.S. senator from Kentucky, and there's 66 of them. So we're going to do this for a long time. Matter of fact, my co-founder, Andre Regard, is here today. I'd like to introduce him. He's over here to the right. Now, Andre is a direct descendant of Basil Hayden. It's true. And people have asked me, well, when you guys are discussing the future of your bourbon company, does he ever say, well, Damon, you know, I'm a descendant of Basil Hayden? Now I can respond, well, yeah, I'm a member of the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame. I am so grateful for this honor today. Look, I came to Kentucky to work in the horse business and kind of stumbled into a love of bourbon. And it all started in 2009 with that bill that Eric talked about. See, during my 22 years in the Kentucky State Senate, my main goal was removing artificial barriers to free enterprise for businesses of all sizes. And those of you who work in the bourbon business, you know that there were lots of artificial barriers erected for you by the then legislature post-prohibition. After the Volstead Act was repealed, it was given to the states to decide how to regulate alcohol. And those Baptist legislators who dominated Kentucky's legislature, they put up plenty of roadblocks for you all. So what triggered me to become a bourbon advocate was voting no on that bill in 2009. And I still think it's one of the dumbest things that the Kentucky General Assembly has done over the last 25 years, putting a hidden alcohol tax on our number one product. So that's the day I became a bourbon advocate. And I'm proud to say that ever since that day, the bourbon industry is undefeated in Frankfurt. Can I hear some agreement on that? Eric, because he's really good at his job, has counted up that during the time I was in Frankfurt, there were 20 different bills that became law to help support this industry. Too many to go into today, but two that were especially memorable for me would be Senate Bill 11 from 2016 that Chad mentioned. That's the privileges bill that allowed restaurants at our distilleries, cocktails, sampling, greater sales and gift shop. That, when you go to our Bourbon Trail stops today, it's hard to believe that 10 years ago, you didn't have the privileges that you had today. You didn't have the number of visitors. And we know during times of economic uncertainty that the tourism portion of the bourbon industry continues to be strong and is such an important part of business plans across this Commonwealth. So I'm really proud of that bill and Senator John Schickel, who sponsored it. And then just a year before I left the General Assembly, of course, in 2023, House Bill 5, which is the 20-year phase-out of the barrel tax. That was a big moment. Because what do businesses require? Certainty. When you're making your plans, especially for a product that takes years to get to the consumer, you need certainty. And for the first time since the awful implementation of the barrel tax, you have certainty. I wish we could have made it shorter, but believe me, we got the best deal we could. And never had to twist as many arms as we did to get that bill passed. As a matter of fact, I'm just up here today as one guy who believed in this industry and was unafraid to stand strong for it. But John F. Kennedy once said that victory has 1,000 fathers, failure is an orphan. And there are a lot of legislators in both the House and the Senate, both Republican and Democrat, who have voted for these bourbon bills over the year. And just a couple of them are here with me today, and I want to recognize them. My former counterpart in the House of Representatives from Keville, Kentucky, House Majority Leader Stephen Rudy. Thanks, Rudy, for coming all the way over here. And you talk about Mary Dowling being a badass for bourbon. Fred said shit earlier, so I can say badass. Okay. Thanks for that, Fred. I appreciate you clearing the decks for me. Two of my best friends in the entire world and two absolute rock stars for the bourbon business. From Lexington, the vice chair of the Appropriations and Revenue Committee, Amanda Mays Bledsoe. And my friend who, people ask me if I miss being in Frankfurt, and the answer is no, but I do miss some people, and the one I miss the most is the chair of the Licensing and Occupations Committee. That's the fun committee. Drinking and gambling goes to her committee, from Louisville, Senator Julie Rocky Adams. These are the people you're going to rely on to make sure that nothing bad happens to the bourbon industry. And I have every confidence, and I'm really, really glad that they were able to come today. And I appreciate Chad for the too short time he was in Frankfurt. We worked together to slay a lot of dragons, and I couldn't think of anybody better to introduce me today, and I appreciate that, Chad. Hopefully we can find a collaboration in our bourbon businesses somewhere along the way. My daughter is here today. My daughter, Katie, she's a pilot, so only 8% of pilots in America are women, so I was really glad for her to hear the Mary Dowling story today. She lives in Nashville. My sister, who's a nurse, moved down from Michigan a few years ago and lives near me in Georgetown. I'm really happy she's here. And, people ask me, what do I want to be remembered for? Well, first of all, I hope I don't have to be remembered anytime soon. I'm only 58, as Eric told the whole world today. But I'm a loyal guy. I'm loyal to my kids. My son Daniel works in Washington, D.C. I hope he's watching the live stream. I'm loyal to my kids. I'm loyal to the principles that I believe make America great. America always has been great. America still is great, and America will continue to be great because of the principles that the entrepreneurs in this room espouse. And I'm loyal to industries like horse racing and bourbon, the two signature industries of this Commonwealth that make it unique from the other 49 states. And as a guy who's a transplant, one of the only 25% of people who weren't born here but chose to come here, the bourbon industry is what makes this place special and unique. And I'm just glad during my time in the legislature that I had a few strokes on a masterpiece. Just a few strokes on a masterpiece. And that masterpiece is the industry that you make work every day. I'm proud to help remove a few of those artificial barriers to free enterprise. And I wish all of us in the bourbon business continued success and prosperity in the years to come. And I thank you for this great honor today. To be on a list with names like Beam and No and Johnson and Russell, it's Ebersol. Look, I'm 58, I can't remember everything. It's the honor of a lifetime, and I'm very, very grateful and appreciative. And I'll see you back here at this luncheon next year.